up first, are police investigating too many hate crimes? 0207 862 2222 is the number for your thoughts on this. And we'll take your calls very shortly. A new report by the police watchdog has found that officers are politically correct and spend too much time investigating incidences which result in hurt feelings. Now, Andy Cooke, who is the author of the report, reviewed 120 cases and found that 30 should not have been recorded or investigated at all. One case, police intervened after a man reported passengers on a bus giving him, quote, funny looks due to his ethnicity and appearance. Elsewhere, police intervened after a 10-year-old uttered a racist slur at school. Now, this was recorded as according to the report, incorrectly recorded as a racially aggravated public order crime. There's quite a lot to unpack here.
It's a lot for a 10-year-old to unpack.
Yeah, it is a lot for a 10-year-old to unpack. But what are we talking about here when we talk about hate crimes and what's the other definition that they keep using in this report? Criminal hate crime?
Non-crime hate incident.
Thank you. OK, what is the difference between those two?
We have a very confusing landscape here. And it comes as absolutely no surprise to me that the police, quite frankly, have got themselves in a dreadful tangle over this. What we will need at some point is some legislation to clarify the whole landscape. At the moment, a hate crime, basically, is one that involves the perception by the victim that something has been done to them or said to them because of sex, race, religion, disability, or if they identify as transgender. So they're the kind of qualifying criteria. So, as you can imagine, if, say, for example, I was your neighbour, OK, and I'm not, and I didn't like your dog, OK, and I said to you, for example, your dog keeps me awake at night. Now, shut it up. Now, have I committed a crime? Arguably, no. If I say to you, shut it up, or else, then that puts a completely different kind of complexion on things. There seems to be an element of threat there. If you said I did it because you were Scottish, for example, yeah, and I'd mentioned that, then we start getting into the hate crime territory. But what the police have also been doing is recording incidents that are not crimes. They don't break a specific law, but they are recorded as non-crime hate incidents.
In fact,
now, I've probably lost the audience there and confused everybody, but that's kind of how it is. Very confusing, unclear, and the police are getting themselves in a real pickle over it.
And you think they are investigating too many of these?
I think what Andy Cooke, who's a former chief constable and he's now the chief of the inspectorate into the policing, what he does say is that the police have got themselves dreadfully confused over so many things, a sort of political correctness, a wokeness with rainbow lanyards, painting police cars in rainbow colours, all of which I fundamentally totally disagree with. And because the police themselves are confused, is it any surprise that their crime recording is confusing as well?
Tessa?
A couple of things. Has anybody ever seen a policeman or woman with a rainbow lanyard?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
OK, I'm still looking for one, and I'm fascinated by that. What did it make you feel?
Well, my actual thoughts on it all is that in the entirely unlikely event that I ran the policing world, the police officers of this great nation would only be allowed to wear their issue uniforms. So no rainbow lanyards, no badges of allegiance to this country or that group or that organisation, nothing. You're supposed to be impartial, you're supposed to police without fear or favour. You do not wear accoutrements to your uniform that identify...
Can I wear a crucifix around my neck?
No. You can wear it under your shirt, of course you can. And likewise, I wouldn't even allow people, and this won't be universally popular, but I wouldn't allow people to wear a poppy during the remembrance period because we had a debate not so long ago about people wearing white poppies. So you see, once
you just don't want the door to be open.
Exactly. Okay. Keep that door firmly shut. Show your independence.
What do you think, Tessa?
What was interesting was your definition of what a hate crime was and how easily it blurred into actually what I thought you demonstrated there was a non-crime hate incident.
There you go.
Because I didn't feel she was threatened or assaulted or that she was harassed or that there was any public disorder. And I was also wondering whether it was a hate crime, because you said one of the categories for hate crime was sex. Actually, women are not protected in hate crimes. Your sexual orientation is. So if you were a lesbian and he had said, you so-and-so, citing your sexuality, keep your dog under control, then you're getting into the hate area. But just being a woman, it isn't enough. He can hate on you as much as he likes.
Okay, so we kind of get what we're talking about here. We're not saying that somebody goes out and commits GBH and it's racially aggravated because that is a crime regardless of the racial element. You're just debating whether there is a hate crime involved there. We are talking about things where there hasn't really been a physical crime taking place, but there may have been a hatred in
building up, a ratcheting up of the atmosphere, the tension, the discrimination, the bullying, etc. Where I really actually, and it's not often I say this, feel sorry for the police is I don't blame them for being confused, because one minute we have a Home Secretary who's commissioning reports like this, Suella Braverman, saying, you know, too much attention's been given to this, we need to rescind and draw back, at the same time as she called out what she decided were hate marches earlier in the year. And then the next minute, in comes Yvette Cooper, the new Home Secretary, saying, actually, no, she wants these non-crime hate incidents to be recorded, because that, if you like, is evidence in a world of detection which police are involved in, that can lead you to discovering who is culpable for a subsequent hate crime. So this is a really confused and very fast-moving landscape, exacerbated by global tensions. We know that the Middle East and the narrative
and
there
social media, I think a lot of their attention might be towards things happening on social media and people saying things on social media, and hearty feelings seems to be a phrase that's used quite a lot.
And a risk-averse police service. And we know that. They're scared of their own shadows sometimes, as well as the courageous work that the front line do. When you start getting into the policing corridors of power, they're more obsessed with perception than they are doing policing, of which they've done very little.
But Tessa, you actually think there's value in recording these sorts of instances?
Well, I think on the one hand, you can't. For instance, I live in London and I sit on the tube and there's a poster that says, no staring or don't stare. And when you look, but I have to go right up to the poster and have a look at the small print. And it's
staring at it.
Staring at this poster. It's if I stare at you in what might be perceived as a sexually motivated way, then that could be a crime. That tantamount to harassment.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Hard to prove.
Hard to prove.
Which is why maybe the police are always tangled up in this, because it's hard to prove intention.
Very grey area.
So, but generally, you think these are good. My question to you is, if you are happy with the police investigating many of these instances, it's taking their time away from rape cases, which we know the conviction rate is woefully low. It's shoplifting.
Kind of more bog standard, basic burglar bill stuff.
So how do you level that up?
Well, these are difficult and political questions. I don't think that every incident should be recorded. I think there needs to be much clearer, consistent messaging from government. Politicians should then stand back and not wade in. In this report, they are actually critical of the politicians. I think there was one instance of a Jewish man felt it was unsafe to cross the street, or that a policeman,
I remember that.
He'd put pressure on him or told him don't dress to represent so
obviously Jewish.
And actually, when openly Jewish. And when they looked into it, in fact, it was found that the policeman was acting with patience and due respect. But by then, politicians had, gobbed off in the media and ratcheted up the tension. I think a lot of the tension comes from our leaders, and I'm hoping that there's going to be a more reasoned period of calm, so that the police can sit down with the guidelines and work out what threatens people's safety and well-being and what doesn't.
I've just got a message here from Ollie on X. Thank you very much for sending it in, and I want to put this to Peter. Ollie goes on to say, if they fail to investigate something small and that leads to something much more tragic, they will be criticised for not acting earlier, missing the warning signs. It's a thankless task either way. I do wonder whether, I can imagine your frustration at the police getting wrapped up in red tape and dealing with people saying really horrible things online all the time, and they just do it constantly. But maybe in their investigations they find one person that's has the potential to commit a really hideous crime, and they're just giving out little signals now that means the police can act quicker. Isn't that a good thing?
Well said, Ollie. The word he's referring to, of course, is escalation. And we know with certain types of offending, it is so often an indicator that that person's behaviour might escalate into a very, very serious crime. If we talk about my dog example,
Yes.
which I would have been called to cases like that in the 70s, I'd have had a word with you and said, can you kindly keep your dog from barking all night long, OK? Because that really doesn't help. And generally speaking, the matter would have resolved itself. But of course, society has galloped on in the ensuing decades. So now we have people that know all of their rights and none of their responsibilities. Yeah, it might be your right to have a dog, but it's also your responsibility to make sure it doesn't keep the neighbours awake at night. And so much of that has been lost. And in turn, it's made policing more difficult. And now we have a police service largely full of very inexperienced people on the front line, not only inexperienced in policing, but inexperienced in terms of life skills. This
So they're
is
not
why
using common sense.
It's so, he alludes to that in the report.
And also, we know that the police are most effective when they're policing their own, often, and we still don't have anywhere nearly the numbers of minority ethnic police force workers, even women in the force, certainly on the streets of London, which is a highly diverse city, other big diverse cities. And I think if you could crank that up, then your policing would be more instinctive and less, oh, I mustn't get this wrong, you know, I've got to make sure I'm right.
You're fundamentally wrong. The Met Police in particular has tried doing that for getting on for 3 decades
And they failed.
And they failed. But at the end of the day, what you need of policing, it doesn't matter. If you're a police officer wearing a uniform, your gender, your race, your sexuality, your faith, none of that is relevant. It's not important. What you do is you police without fear or favour, you have common sense, and you learn the ability to see round the corner to know what's coming.
I think that's naive to suggest that if you are a female police officer, you don't bring something different to the job.
I didn't say that.
But you did, because you said it's irrespective of gender, of colour, of religion, you just get on and police.
I want to get back to the calls here. Duncan from Argyll and Butte, what do you think about this? Do you think we're focusing too much on hate crimes, maybe playground stuff?
Yes, well, thank you for letting me, thank you for inviting me on. Well, I was just saying to your, the person, you know, your person before when I phoned. Yeah, well, you see, I've got a learning disability myself, but I'm also personal safety trainer to other people with disabilities, some of which are very good friends of mine. In fact, I'm giving a presentation tonight at our community hub, which I'm looking forward to doing.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
So what's your view on this? Do you think that we spend too much time focusing on hearty feelings rather than real crimes?
But then the thing is, right? Okay, I'm just trying to put this in context. If the police now, if people beg to differ, that's absolutely fine.
They will.
But if we're going to put the point that police are maybe investigating too many hate crimes, it's going to come across to society. Well, but then if they can't investigate enough of hate crimes, why you might as well put why are the police investigating too much of other stuff? But the thing is getting the balance where police don't want to overuse their resources, but they don't want to be seen to not be doing anything either.
Well, it is a difficult balance, and you are right.
Yeah.
We don't want to be seen that we almost decriminalise casual racism or bigotry or any of the anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. So it's very difficult. The police do have to create a balance and walk a fine line between not dealing with playground taunts, sometimes quite literally, as we heard, in the playground, but still making it that, you know, a firm hand will be taken if you are seen to racially aggravate any situation.
Brilliantly highlighted by Duncan. We don't want to give a green light to haters to carry on hating and then to potentially escalate their misbehaviours. I absolutely agree with him. But what is needed, I think, is a thorough overview, rethink from the government, and I'm not a big fan of more laws upon more laws. But here, because the landscape is so confusing, because that police officer on the front line doesn't know what to do, their chiefs don't know what to do either, otherwise they'd be getting clear
signals,
guidance. That's what we need.
Duncan, thank you very much for your call. Lauren from Somerset, what's your view on this? Are we focusing too much on tittle-tattle? Is it fair to call it that? It can be very offensive.
I think we should be a bit more selective about who we are actually concentrating on, because when it comes to the disabled or people with autism and they report a hate crime, they very, very rarely, the police does anything about it.
Oh, so you think I mean, Keir Starmer's already been accused of two-tier policing, but you think there is there's different tiers of hate crime and they're treated differently by the police?
Oh yes, totally.
Okay, and you think this is incredibly unfair? You think they should all be treated the exact same? But that would mean even more focus on hate crimes, Lauren?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, if you've got a hate crime, you should focus on it, really, shouldn't you?
Even if it's just somebody calling someone a name in a playground, should that not be dealt with by the school?
Well, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about abuse, going into people's homes and taking over their money and things. That's the sort of thing that happens to the disabled. And yes. It's very hard to get. It's very, very hard to get the police to prosecute. So they'll prosecute, but they'll always leave the hate crime out of it.
I think
when it is in fact a hate crime.
I think because it's quite hard to prove, and actually it might muddy the waters somewhat. But I understand that your frustration in that. But actually, listening to you, I do feel like that you would like more focus on actual, real physical crime, which is what you're describing there, rather than maybe people using words. But some people will think that's still a crime. I need to move on. I know you're desperate to get in. Everybody's chomping at the bit. We could continue doing this for hours. Lauren, thank you very much for your call.